Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Small Biz Matters, the half-hour program where you work on your business rather than in it. My name is Alexi Boyd, your trusted business advisor, small business lover and enjoyer of all things admin. That's it, really. I love all the things you love to hate. I'm well joined by a fantastic guest today. I'm really looking forward to today's show. We've got a bit of a guest fest going on in Small Biz Matters at the moment. And we've got Gary here today who's going to be talking to us all about sales. Now, I'm going to say this first up, that sales is not marketing. And this is something that Gary taught me originally when we were talking about sales and what is the difference? What is the difference between the two? Why it's important to understand the concept of sales when you've got a marketing process that's going on in your business as well. And last time we had Gary on the show, we were talking about some top tips with just getting your sales up and running, what sort of apps you might consider using to get control of what's going on with your customer relationship management. And you can, of course, have a look at that show, which is available on our podcasts on smallbizmatters.com.au. So in terms of what we're going to be talking about today, Gary is a sales expert and he's going to be sharing with us some top tips on improving lead generation as a small business. And the great news is, yay, which we love, all these are going to be, well, lots of them are going to be actually available for free for you as a small business. You've just got to be really savvy and know where to look. So welcome to the show again, Gary. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Alexi. Nice to be here.
And look, why is it, am I wrong? Am I barking up the wrong tree when I say marketing doesn't necessarily equate to sales, or is it because the two of them need to come together? I know it's a bit of a topic I'm obsessed with whenever we chat, but why is it that we say the word sales and we don't just lump it into marketing as a small business? Why do we have to distinguish the two, do you think?
I think maybe since the last time I met with you that I heard an expression that was kind of very elegantly pitched the two. Marketing talks to an audience and sales talks to the individual. And so a lot of people get caught up in what they've got to do with their marketing activities, and that's great. You need to have marketing activities running in the background. But sales is about execution one-to-one. So it's about the discussion that I have with the person that I'm actually selling to. Mm-hmm. And that then, poses a whole new question around what your content looks like, how you get to that person, etc. So the marketing machine is that funnel of bringing in the lead or the opportunity to the door potentially. And then the execution is what happens when the salesperson actually has that one-to-one discussion with the person that they're trying to sell to. And that's the difference between the two. So when you don't, in the absence of a marketing team and you're just doing pure lead generation, which is what we're talking about today, that's kind of key to then making sure that your activities around how you generate leads are, very well defined, very well executed, and are programmatic in how you approach it. So that's I guess essentially the differences between the two.
It's a fantastic way to describe it, and I love the moment there where you moved to processes and procedures towards the end there. It's like your own personal funnel. You bring it in with those activities, which is a great way to describe all of your marketing stuff that you do, because essentially you want to automate that as much as possible. You don't want it to be you sitting there doing a grudge work and trying to engage with everybody one-on-one on something like Facebook. You want to use the algorithms and make it work for you, whether that be, and we shouldn't just talk about Facebook because that is not where Facebook is heading, as we know, but talking about those larger channels working in your favour, whether it be print collateral or advertising on your local radio station, or it might be talking about Facebook or on those online platforms. It's like those are sending out the tendrils and bringing people into you, but at the end of the day, that one-on-one relationship is, I guess, where the sales thing kicks in, and then the process of engagement and then turning those into a sale is what we're talking about at this stage.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously when we talk about lead generation, that's please correct me if I'm wrong, but the lead generation is the generating of the lead from your activities that you've got happening, and then we're talking now about the conversion between a lead into starting the relationship as a sale. Is that what you mean there by lead conversion?
Yeah, so it's more about, what techniques are you doing to do your own lead generation? So assume that there's either some sort of a marketing engine behind that's helping to bring customers to the door, but if in the absence of that and you're doing your own one-on-one lead generation, it's about what techniques are you using to get to those customers? How are you assessing what is the best customer to get to, and what discussions are you having to get to those customers, or what activities are you having? So I guess what I tend to see is that somebody will say, I'm just going to do this. And that's, I guess, where I see a lot of the problems happen in lead generation, because there is no one technique that's a winning technique. It needs to be a blended approach, which means using all means available to us. And I mean, traditional means that we're all familiar with, but we don't necessarily revert to using them and using them well. So I mean email, I mean cold calls, I mean asking customers for referrals, using the in-mail function on LinkedIn if you're paying for the premium version of LinkedIn in the absence of being able to send out emails. Facebook, and for whatever the mechanism is of how you would use Facebook. I'm probably more on the B2B side, so I use LinkedIn more than I would Facebook.
Mm-hmm. But the concept's still the same, just trying to generate leads back to your website.
Absolutely, or generate leads directly back to you.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of all of those things, and all of them need to happen in tandem. So you're sending out emails, you're making calls, you're sending emails, you're sending out posts, etc., to keep yourself relevant in the market. But what I tend to see happen is that somebody will say, well, I called that person twice and I didn't hear back, so I let it go. And that's where I say, so what happened to the email? What happened to another 3 or 4 calls to follow that up? What happened to another email to follow that up? It's just, you have to be persistent to get through to people these days. You and I both know we get a million emails in our inbox where something might be of interest to us, but we might just delete it because we go, not now, and you delete.
Yeah.
Or you don't even bother reading it, it just sits in your inbox. But until that person comes back to you 2 or 3 times, it might only be on the 3rd or 4th time, or 2nd or 3rd time, that you actually say, yeah, I actually think I do want to have a chat to that person.
Yeah, I had exactly that. And someone connected with me on LinkedIn. I went, okay. I was at that stage where I was just hitting whack-a-mole. And they after a couple of really persistent emails, I went, hang on, this person's actually going to be very, very useful. But even then, I didn't have the time to engage straight away. So I guess my process was to, first of all, I use flags a lot in my inbox because, even if you are the most organised person in the world, I get desperately distressed if my inbox goes below the bottom of the page. So my inbox is a to-do list and everything's filed away. And then when I'm busy, it's probably at least a couple of hundred emails long. I know a couple of you sitting there going, I've got 24,000. But what I try and do is file things away quickly, and then I use the flags in Outlook to color code things. So if it's a client and it's urgent, I've got to get back to them ASAP, it's red. But if it's a follow-up for a contact that I think might be useful, it's purple. But more important than that, I just quickly respond to the email using my full signature, not the reply. You sometimes use the reply, it's only got a couple of lines, but you use the full one, and I say, thank you so much for connecting with me. I'm just drowning in client work at the moment. Is it all right if I get back to you in a couple of weeks? Now, how long did that just take to type? Quick little email, shoot it off. And then you've started that process, haven't you? You've engaged with them and you've recognised that there's something that's going to be useful.
Correct, yeah. And again, I think that's a case of, I know, Alexi, you're very organised, but for a lot of people, if they're flooded with emails in their inbox, may not do that. And so an email that might be sent from you to a prospective customer could just get lost in the sea of emails that they get, which is why if you sent an email and then you followed up with a phone call, if you think you're finished, you're a long way from finished by way of lead generation in modern day selling world. You need to be touching that customer probably in a small to medium business, I would say at least 5 to 6 times before you get to that decision maker or influencer if you're chasing somebody in a business that's of that kind of position. And if you're reaching a senior executive in a larger business, and I'm talking from experience, and this is certainly anecdotally the proof, it can take 12 to 14 touch points before you get through to like a CFO in a mid-sized business or a CIO or something like that.
Which might be who you're targeting in terms of who it is that you as a consultant want to engage with.
Correct, yeah. And real life experience I did. I was working where, for a company where I had to get to some CFOs, and I was experiencing exactly that. It took me, in the one instance, it took me nine calls, combination of calls, emails, to get to that CFO. But it wasn't, and when I did get through to him, all he said was, yes, I've seen a couple of emails from you and I know you've called me a couple of times, not realising that it's actually been 9 times that I've done that.
But in his mind, it's only 1 or 2.
That's it, because he might have only have seen those. But I got to him, I got a meeting, we're engaged, we're now fully engaged.
Yeah.
Had I given up at the 5 point? we wouldn't be where we are.
It's funny you say that number is so high, because I can recall doing some cold calling previously in a different life, and I remember thinking, oh my God, I've got to leave this person alone. It's literally, I mean, you get to the point where you go, I'm hassling this person, I look like an idiot, but like you said, at their end, in their mind, you've only really got through once or twice.
Yeah, and I think that's, How
do you find that balance?
There is. You need to be sensible about it, and I was going to bring that up a little later to say that you need to use your better judgment for what size of business you're chasing, how many people, the calibre of person that you're trying to get in touch with, to be able to say, look, it's 5 times now. Anything more than that, and I'm actually I'm pestering that person, so I need to let that one go, and potentially come back to it in a few months' time, or let it go completely. But yeah, you need to use your better judgment. Like with that one, with that CFO, I knew that it was just a case of this guy was up to his eyeballs, and I just needed to be persistent and continue. So
how did you get past the gatekeeper, just out of curiosity? Because I used to be a gatekeeper as an executive assistant, so how did you get past them?
The gatekeeper wasn't actually too bad. So his executive assistant fully understood the value proposition of what it was that we had, and thought that there was reason for him to have a look, and was helping the situation. But even with that help, it still took 9 touch points.
Interesting.
So she was very helpful, but again, I could have easily given that one up after 5 or 6 attempts, and we wouldn't be where we are today. And we have a proposal that's just about to be put on the table for that one. So again, it was important enough to continue, and that's where, again, my better judgment said, I understand, I think, what's happening behind the scenes, given some of the support I had with EA, and even getting to her wasn't, challenging to begin with. But I wasn't going to let go, yeah.
I think we've all been in those positions. I think even as a small business, just engaging with someone else, you can recognise, and your judgment can kick in as to when that is a really important. And even if it does take a few months, which sort of raises the issue of timelines, and that you have to have a number of these things on the go, don't you? You've got to have a number of fry pans on the element going at once. It's kind of like cooking a meal for a dinner party. You've got to have multiple things going to get to the end game. Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key messaging here is that for everyone, they need to be a little more persistent than they are, perhaps. Maybe, in years gone by, you could have got away with 2 or 3 calls, and you might have had an engagement happen out of 2 or 3. We're all time poor. We're all super busy. We all get flooded in our inbox, our voicemails, our in-mails, wherever it is that the communications are hitting us in Facebook. We're all getting flooded, and so you need to stand out in that sea of communication that's happening, and that extra little bit of persistence could be the difference between winning or losing winning a customer, or actually not having any engagement at all.
Yeah.
So you don't even get to the door. So that's really the key thing here, is that persistence needs to be stepped up a little higher.
Look, we might just take a quick break here on Triple H 100.1 FM. You are listening to Small Biz Matters, and we've got a fantastic guest today, Gary from Your Sales Manager. We're talking about sales strategies and talking about outbound techniques to convert those activities that you do in the background that you're hoping are working for you, and changing them into sales leads. So let's take a quick break here. We'll be back after this. My name is Alexi Boyd on Small Biz Matters. We'll be back. And you are listening to Triple H 100.1 FM. Welcome back to the program. Today we are talking here on Small Biz Matters about sales techniques, lead generation, and how to convert those into actual dollar figures. And we have our guest here from Your Sales Manager, which is Gary. Thank you for joining us on the show today.
Thanks again, Lexi.
It's great to have you. Those of you who missed Gary's original show, we have all of our podcasts, loads of information available to you on smallbizmatters.com.au. Now, I've had a couple of people ask about getting those podcasts online and getting them into iTunes. Working on it. I'm working on it. I know some of you go, I've got 1 hour drives, and that's when I need to be listening to your show. So yes, that is part of the process. As soon as the fair is over, I'll be able to dedicate more time to my wonderful listeners. So coming back to what we were talking about on the show, sales strategies using outbound techniques. Can you give me some examples of some sales strategies? I guess we're talking back into those marketing activities now. Or are you saying these are the ones you use after you've got your audience engaged? Now you want to start the sales strategies. This is where we're at in the process?
By way of messaging? Yeah. So that's probably key, is that messaging of all of your communications need to be very structured, very personalised, because we all know what generic approaches look like, both by way of phone, by way of email. And so they don't see the light of day. You'll get a generic email that's just hi, no Alexi or anything like that.
Or hi, small business owner. Or hi, Alexi or Alexandra Boyd. That's my favourite. It's when they've got where you've got that data from, because that's really old.
So, and that's exactly the point, is that, we all get flooded with those, and so they're very quickly deleted or dismissed, in any way, shape or form, whether it's phone or email, wherever it's coming from. So you need to research your customer. If you're doing a one-on-one outbound approach, be it by phone or by email or by in-mail, do your research. So have a look at the customer's website, have a look at what they do, see if you can understand the markets that they're working in, and then structure your communication to be very tailored to that customer, so that when they get it, it looks like you're actually somebody that's connected to their business already, where there's some, you've shown interest in their business, you understand what they do, and your messaging reflects that. And then, not being in too much of a sell mode for what it is that you're doing is what value you would add to their business in a very discreet kind of way. Again, not being too pushy about selling, but what it is that your product or service may be of value and how it would be of value to their business. Again, we all see a lot of emails and content where it's just, I'm pushing my product. I'm selling this widget. Do you want to buy this widget?
Yep.
And people, if you're selling just widgets, that's fine. If you're selling a pair of shoes and you say interested in these shoes, that's the kind of thing that people probably buy once a year or whatever they do. So you could catch them on a day where they go, yeah, those shoes look good, but that's not what we're selling here. So that content and that messaging needs to be very tailored. And if you've got that messaging right, the chances of that person actually acknowledging the email or the phone call are much, much higher, obviously. And so that's why you need to take a step back and have a think about it. I constantly ask people to review my own content that I push out for when I'm doing outbound, to say, do you think that resonates? Do you think my messaging looks good? Even though I think it looks brilliant, I still go to peer review, if you like to say, tell me if you think that works. And I always garner some feedback from somebody else to say, maybe you could tweak that or say this or do that. And then I take the good from those comments and put them into action. But I think the key thing is to make sure that you are doing that research and that you are actually getting to know that customer beforehand, and they see that in the email or the phone call that you get. Like, Alexi, I noticed on your website that you blah, whatever it was. Gee, you've researched me, you've looked at me, you know who I am. Yeah, that kind of communication.
And it's very easy to do, and it's not. It literally will take 30 seconds just to click on someone's LinkedIn profile, scroll through what it is that they are doing, who are they connected with, who have you got common connections with. That's something that you see quite. Oh, look at that! Looks like we've got so and so, and you can't just say, we've got these common connections. No, that's cheating. I want you to actually look at who it is that we both know, who are also very well connected, who might be able to assist with our getting together and having a chat. So initially, do you suggest, you mentioned there were 10 or a number of touch points. Do you suggest that this needs to be a part of almost every way that you could connect with these people, whether it be an indirect email or through LinkedIn? Is that where you're saying that it needs to happen? The personability of it? That's not the right word.
Yeah, the connect point and how you approach that kind of personalisation of that connect point. Yeah, definitely. So whatever the medium is that you're using to communicate with a customer, be it email, calling, or just email or Facebook, whatever the mechanism is, do that research. In my own business, so I do, I will send out 3 either emails or in-mails a day.
Can you just describe for people who don't know what those are? What's an in-mail?
An in-mail is LinkedIn's me sending it's like an email within LinkedIn.
Yeah, kind of like Facebook Messenger.
Yeah, it is like,
but for business.
Absolutely. So I'll either send an email, preferably an email if I can find email addresses, and I'll talk to how there are some tools that you can use to help find that. Or I'll send an in-mail, which is the LinkedIn mailing within LinkedIn, and I'll only do. The research time and sending out takes me an hour to send out 3 a day. And that's my target. I do 3 a day, but that's me going and looking at the customer. Is this a customer profile that is in my demographic of who I would like to be engaged with? And then I research their website, I research the people that work within the business, and I'm looking for certain markers to say, yes, that's ideal for me, and then this is the person that I'm going to connect with. And to my other point, exactly who are you connecting with? Is it just the pure decision maker, or is there somebody else that might be an influencer that you need to be connecting with that's going to have more relevance for you than the actual decision maker? Or do you connect with both? Again, it's your better judgment to say which one should you connect with, or should you connect with both, but acknowledging that you've done that, so that you say, well, look, I've also sent an email to, X, Y, and Z, but I'm reaching out to you because you're also kind of important in the overall view of what this may be, or what this offering might bring to yield for value for your business.
Because there's nothing worse than engaging or getting a phone. I literally got a phone call from a company yesterday saying, I noticed that you made a booking with us a year ago. Are you interested in doing that booking again? And I went, I've already spoken to so-and-so and the booking's going ahead. You might want to check your... And there's wow, they just looked totally unprofessional because they hadn't connected the fact that one person I was engaging with at their company was already happening with me, if you know what I mean. So it's important that you have in your sales process, like you said, if you're engaging with someone else in the company, that you tell them that that's happening, because I think nothing could be more embarrassing at the boardroom level where there's two people sitting down and go, I met this great person for coffee, and they went, yeah, I met him at 10.
Yeah, exactly.
And they didn't realise they were meeting, and you don't want to waste people's time.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, that's the kind of thing that in that instance where somebody had called you, I would put money on it. They didn't have a CRM at the back end, and
that everyone's got access to.
That everyone
they might have their own
to,
CRM,
and that everyone's actually updating and putting the data in there. So key to any of the content that I'm talking about here is that all of that needs to be recorded in what you in a CRM, because none of us have got good enough. Well, maybe some do, but I don't have good enough
nobody
memory.
Nobody with children does. That's all right.
To go back and look at every single communication that I had with a customer, be it a combination of, where I might have had 5 or 6 calls, what happened at each of those.
Yes.
So I have to be able to go back to it, and so should anyone else that's doing any level of outbounding or lead generation of their own, to make sure that they are on top of what they did and said last in a CRM, and not a spreadsheet, in a CRM.
Yeah, so just because we talked about this last time you came on the program, one of those that you recommended was HubSpot.
HubSpot is
that's
great.
a nice free one.
HubSpot is fantastic. Insightly is another one that's great. There's a number of free CRMs out there that are really good. But between HubSpot and Insightly, you can't go wrong with both of those.
It doesn't need to be complicated either. It's really, you just need to have a process, not a process, but like a progression of discussions, emails, what you talked about last time. When did you promise you'd get back to them? That's a big one. Or worse still, when is that actual meeting? Don't forget to put the meeting in your diary.
Absolutely.
And don't make the mistake of, I made this actual mistake a couple of weeks ago, to be honest. I accepted someone's invitation that they sent me and I assumed it went into my calendar. They sent it to me on Outlook. I use my Google Calendar, so it didn't go in. And I literally missed the meeting. I literally got that horrible phone call where they want, I'm not kidding, what coffee do you want me to order you? And I'm on the train in my yoga gear going, oh my God, this was a really important one. Luckily, this very kind person said, it's okay. I live locally. We can meet up again. I totally understand. And in that situation, you have to be human. Everyone's human.
Absolutely.
Just don't let it happen too many times. And make sure if someone sends you an Outlook invitation, you put it in your Google Calendar, because sometimes they won't communicate that way. So it's kind of... It's that progression of the discussions you have with them. You don't want to forget that nugget of something they've said to you. They might say to you, oh, I've got a really great meeting. Why don't you come along to it? And you're like, damn, I can't come to that because I've got a client meeting. But the next conversation you can say, how was that? How did that go for you? How was that meeting? So you show that you remember the conversation you had with them. And then the other thing I think what I'm looking for, because, the last time we talked, I still haven't put my CRM together yet. I know I haven't had time. I blame the fare. But then another thing you want to know is you want to be able to categorize, hot, warm and cold. So you can work out what someone is. It's not really important, as opposed to, oh my goodness, this person's going to be really useful right now. I need to keep either hassling them or getting back to them as quickly as possible. And you want that from your CRM.
Yeah, absolutely. So, CRM has a number of components to it. Obviously, one is just the pure customer contact management piece, which is principally what we're talking about today. But then there's actual deal progression and lead progression to say, how is that running through the system of progression to a close or conversion of that sale.
And then there's the statistics as well at the back end.
Correct.
Which you can use when you're really hitting it hard.
Absolutely, to say what's the success rate that I'm getting, and I can tell you I know exactly what my success rate is based on what I do with my LinkedIn outreach, the 3 that I do per day, and it's a very successful methodology or campaign for me to be working on. It may not work for everyone, but that's what I found to work for me. But again, as I say, that's only one technique that I'm using. I'm using others, but that's probably the key one to have a look what I'm doing. So I wanted to just touch on a couple of other points on some free tools that you can get.
Ooh, free, yes.
That are just so useful to have. There's a plugin for LinkedIn called Lusha. I'm not sure whether we spoke about this on the last.
How do you spell that?
Lusha. It's free for up to 5 contacts. So if I look up Alexi Boyd, for example, on LinkedIn, and you don't actually have your contact details in LinkedIn, the plugin lets me go click on the little Lusha emblem, and if you have put your phone number details and email details into something else somewhere else, that might be Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Google Plus, anything like that, where it doesn't match and says, yes, I found Alexi's email address and I found her mobile number maybe appearing with 2 hits that are identical, it'll pop that number up and say, yes, here's Alexi's details.
And that's free?
It's free for up to 5 per month, and then you pay, and then it's about $30 a month and you get 50 credits.
So this is a really good one if you've got people that you absolutely desperately have to get hold of and you can't find their details because they're twits and they haven't put them on LinkedIn.
Correct. So you can't find it on their website or you can't find it on LinkedIn. And
really? Does that still happen?
Absolutely. And you're wanting to do an outbound. So I use it a lot because my preference is to want to send emails to customers rather than emails. Not everybody lives and breathes in LinkedIn like I do, and I acknowledge that. So and likewise, with Facebook. So if I can send an email, it's the preference for me to send out an introductory email, or for me doing my own lead generation. And Lusha assists with that, so it lets me find that, and it's a plugin for Chrome. The other one is one called Hunter, which is, so if I'm trawling somebody's website and I'm not finding email addresses, you can click on the Hunter icon and it will automatically pop up emails that are on that website. So wherever they live on that website, it'll pop up emails. Again, it's so many free, and then you have to pay for it per month. I'm not sure what the actual conversion on that one is for where it flips over into being paid, because I tend to use Lusha and it does the job for me.
Right.
But again, it's another useful one for being able to find email addresses where they might be buried on a website where you would spend 40 minutes trying to find somebody's email address, where it might not be in the Contact Us section, it could be somewhere else. It's a great one for finding out that information. But the Lusha one is just fantastic as far as LinkedIn is concerned, because it does often give you mobile numbers, it gives you email addresses, so you've got everything you need to send an email to a customer and then follow them up on their mobile. It's not always accurate, because it might be that somebody entered information into Facebook or Twitter or Instagram 10 years ago with a mobile number that doesn't exist anymore. Not that those platforms existed 10 years ago, but a long time ago. But it's pretty good. It's probably 90% accurate for what it does bring up. It's a couple of very, very useful tools over there. Another one that I use is it's a paid, when I send out an email, it's called Yesware. It tracks emails being sent, so I know that if I sent you an email, Alexi, in probably, again, 90% of the cases, if you don't have some blocking software on your email, it actually just tells me that you've opened my email. And if you open it again in 3 months' time, it shows me on the screen that you've opened that email again. So
that's free?
It's not free. That one's a pay-for one, yeah.
Okay.
You can do a trial, a 30-day trial or something, but then you pay, yeah.
Okay, so that's quite useful. That's something that a software like Xero might use, for example, where it can see where people have actually opened your invoices and viewed them. So they can't lie to you when they say they haven't seen your invoice.
Right, okay. Is that a real thing in Xero?
That's a real thing in Xero, yeah. That's a thing.
It's very similar. So they might have clicked on it. They may not have read the email, but I know that they've actually clicked on it. So, and the other thing is, it's just good to know that if I had an interaction with you and you go back to it 3 months later, you don't want to make it look like you've got ESP when you call, but you know that somebody's had another look at it. There might have been something that's changed about their interest levels in what you spoke about not being relevant then, but being relevant now. At least you have that visibility of the fact that, you know, somebody has gone back to look at that email, and you can, you know, put that in your CRM to call in a couple of days and say, hey, I'm just following up as I would have been. So yes, where is another one that's a very, very useful tool. Yeah.
Are there any things that you can do in your emails to make them look a little bit more likely to be opened? So one of the things I like to do is make sure that I've got a photo in the bottom of my email, just to sort of make it pop out a little bit more. Anything that professional associations, for example, if I'm trying to grab hold of someone in the bookkeeping space to show that I'm part of a professional association. Are there any tips you've got for that? Do you bold stuff? My husband hates it when I bold things in my emails. He said, you're shouting at people, stop that.
Yeah, a lot of people see that as kind of screaming the words at them, but yeah, I think that the most important thing is what's in the subject line of the email, because that's what people see and read first. So the subject line is the most important thing. If you don't have something that captures imagination and relevance quickly in the subject line, your email may not even get looked at. So
you're doing that thing where you're expecting me to condense everything that I do into 10 words.
In less than 10 words.
I can't even do like 50. I really, for those of you out there who might be a bit like me, no creative brain whatsoever, that's really hard to condense and describe in a nutshell while still engaging and making it interesting. It's difficult. Maybe it's because I'm talking about admin that makes it a bit kind of impossible to engage with. But it's hard. It's hard to write down what you do.
It is, and particularly in an email where you've got, you know, maybe you want to put just a maximum of, say, 7 or 8 words in the subject line, where you've got to try and capture the imagination
without shouting.
In my space, it tends to be that if the words revenue and sales come up together in a subject line, that has relevance. People tend to go, yep, I need more sales and I need more revenue, and so that's one that people will look at. You would need to find out in your vertical what are the hot buttons for somebody to say. Is it compliance potentially? Are you compliant with your submissions of your BAS statements or whatever the
compliance?
The thing is.
The pinch points.
Exactly. And you need to get that very elegantly kind of worded within the subject line, and then you can flesh it out a little more, obviously, in the actual body of the email. But again, it still needs to be short, sharp, and snappy, because we haven't got, we're all too time poor to read.
Yes,
long,
more than 7 words apparently.
Well, no, in the subject, in the body of the email, you can be more prescriptive, but
yes.
It's about that subject line has to get my attention and say, yes, I want to look at that.
So is this a good point in time to, we always talk about on the program on Small Biz Matters about surrounding yourself with good people. Is this a good time to engage with a copywriter? Or a marketer? Whose hat do I put on? I literally struggle with this. I mean, I will spend 2 hours working on. I remember when I did my email signature, which is, no, great, now I can't even remember it. Awesome. But when I came up with my email tagline, that literally took me 2 days. So I'm just wondering if there's a more efficient way of doing that. Who do I ask for help with that? Could be family and friends, and you begin with.
I think so. And find people that are your prospective customers and say, how would you perceive this communication, whatever that is?
Perceive. That's a great way to do it.
And look for their feedback on that, because your potential customer is your best possible source of telling you what they think works and doesn't work for what they're likely to look at and read. I went through this exercise just recently with a customer that I did some work with, where we were targeting chartered accountants, and we went and spoke to some chartered accountants. Each of us knew a couple, and so we went and said, what would we need to say to make you go, yes, I'm interested in that? And they gave us the feedback, exactly what we needed, and that rolled out across every one of the other ones that we spoke to as worked. They said, yes, that's what we needed to hear.
And it's something we talk about here on Small Biz Matters a lot, is ask for help. Of when you first start hitting, the networking events and things like that, I have never had anyone turn down the offer of a free coffee to ask them for advice. Would you give me some advice? I'm thinking of a new business venture. I'd love your opinion. I'll buy you a coffee. Have you got an hour to spare? And that's hugely generous of that person to give you a whole hour plus their advice for $4.50. So don't be afraid to ask. And like you said, don't be afraid to ask people who may or may not necessarily become your clients. That's not what you're after. You're after their advice in that space.
Correct.
And if you don't know anyone in that target space, then you will know people who do. You've just got to go out there and ask for that connection and say to people, does anybody know anybody in this space? I'd like to give them a call and ask them some advice. Again, never had anyone decline that, and I've asked many, many times.
And we learnt, I'm prefacing that example of the accountancy firms, but we learnt an enormous amount of information by going and speaking to, each of us went and spoke to two, and each of us came back then with the pool of information that we had gleaned from talking to those two accountancy firms that we had relationships with for how our approach would work. Comes back to my point around researching how you're going to approach your target customer and your target market. So we did that piece of research, and without that, we would absolutely have floundered in our first probably 10 or so outreaches that we had. We would have worked out we were doing something very wrong, and we would have spent a lot of time and effort doing that.
And trying to work out what it was you did wrong, because no one's going to tell you what you did wrong, except for when that guy rang me and said, do you want to buy a sale? I'll be like, dude, I spoke to someone yesterday.
But on the flip side of that coin, if you have the opportunity to do that research, then absolutely it's critical that you do it, because it pays dividends in the long term for how much time and effort you don't waste trying to get messaging that's not going to work. But equally, probably one of the biggest things that I see is indecision and procrastination around getting something done and overthinking things. You at some point just have to go with your gut and get something out and make a start, because if you sit there going, does that look perfect?
Yeah.
And is this the best wording? And is this going to work? And isn't it going to work? You'll never get anything out the door.
Yeah, I literally didn't send out an email for 2 days because I didn't have a tagline, and I felt how that was so important that I had a tagline on the bottom of my emails. I didn't send an email for 2 days, which is so dumb.
And so we get a little bit hung up on the perfection of what it is that we've got to send out, rather than just saying I need to get it out, because this is about building business. It's about lead generation. It's about continuity. Whatever it is that's representative of what it is that you're doing. But yeah, I mean, even for myself, the other day I put a paid ad on LinkedIn, and I sat there deliberating long and hard. Does this look right? Is it going to be the right messaging? And I just went, forget it. Just do it, and push it out the door, because if you don't, you won't know.
Yeah.
And so, I could have sat there and thought about it till the cows come home.
We all work beautifully with deadlines, don't we?
Yeah, that's right.
Look, we're going to take a quick break here on Small Biz Matters. You're listening to me, Alexi Boyd, here on Triple H 100.1 FM. We will be back after this. Today we're talking all about sales techniques. We're talking about strategizing to make sure that you've got a good, solid process. We've mentioned some really fantastic free apps that are available to help you manage your customer relationship management software. And just before the break, Gary, we were speaking a little bit about the importance of getting it right and making sure your message is correct in your hits when you go out from person to person. So when you're really trying to target someone on an individual level, you might be writing an email. You mentioned the most important part, which I hadn't thought of, is the subject line, because these days we just glance at stuff, don't we? I mean, even just the point of getting someone to double click on an email is huge. Absolutely. I mean, that's like a big tick. So really the subject line is all crucial. I've noticed that sometimes with those hits, obviously, clearly that email is going out to 100,000 people, which doesn't make me feel very important, but they've got little icons now in the subject line, whether it be fireworks or little party things. So that's kind of an interesting technique. I guess that's jumping out at me, but pretty soon that's going to stop jumping out at me, isn't it? You've got to be fresh. You've got to be different. Yeah,
correct. And again, it's about really, you have to sit yourself in that position and say, what is it that would excite me to have a look at that and click and read further for what it is that you're trying to do with that person or that customer. But I can't stress the importance of, email is one medium, and there are so many businesses that I see now that have got caught up in the whole, and I'm by no means denigrating digital marketing, but at the end of the day, people still like to talk to people.
Yes.
And so pick up the phone.
Yep.
So if you have sent an email, or you've done something through Facebook where you've connected electronically or had some sort of electronic communication, it needs to be backed up with a phone call. Again, depending on the industry that you're in, it may not pay to make it, the number of calls in some industries where it doesn't pay to do that. But if you're in that space where a phone call is required, then you need to make the call. And it might be that you need to make the 5 or 6 calls to get through to that person. And don't be afraid to do it. If again, to go back to the example that I used, had I given up on that CFO at the 5th call, I would never have got to him. I got to him on the 9th call. It was a combination of calls and emails. But, that's the sort of persistence that it took. So it's not a case of people are disinterested. In a lot of cases, it's more that they're just swamped, and you are one of the people that's, interrupting their day. And that's what we are doing when we're doing an outbound. We are interrupting somebody's day with something that they either hadn't thought of, weren't interested in, up until the time that it hit their inbox. And so you need to keep that interest then, once you've invoked some level of interest through an email, potentially going with the follow-up activity beyond it.
I'm going to ask you the golden question. So you pick up the phone, you dial their number, they answer. What do you say?
Hi, Alexi. I'm bringing on a follow-up to an email that I sent through to you. I'm not sure if you had a chance to read that. It gives them an opportunity to say yes or no as to whether they did.
Yep.
And if they didn't, then it gives me an opportunity to give the value proposition of what that email was about, or what it is that I'm there to talk to them about.
Do you at any stage say, is now a good time to talk?
Absolutely, yeah. If you've got do you have a moment to talk? Of course, yeah. It's again, it's asking for the permission. It's asking them in a lot of cases, I wonder if you could help me. I'm keen to get some feedback around this, where I'm asking them to tell me whether they're in that space or not. So if they say absolutely never have that problem, never, not in a million years, or whatever the case may be, then it could be a case of, well, you're very, it invokes discussion.
Yes.
They've at least agreed to give you some feedback or give you some advice or guidance or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's not being a hard sell at all. It's kind of soliciting some interest and feedback there to say, do we have a progress point here where we actually have an interest in what you do?
Yes. Is there a connection to be made?
And is there a connection to be made? Yeah.
I think it's important that we've, over the last 10 years or so, with all those stupid, we don't even pick up our home phones anymore situation, it's really important, I think, to be kind and considerate when we take those calls. I always try and give people a reason as to why not. As a Xero's bookkeeper on Boyd Office Management Services, proud supporters of Triple H, I always get the calls going, are you happy with the software that you're using? And I will turn around and say, I'm extremely happy. I have no interest in learning an entirely new piece of software that nobody's ever heard of. I really do appreciate your call, but. So it's kind of give them the time of day, be considerate and be kind, even with charities, be kind, especially with charities, be kind. These people are most likely volunteers. So I think you need to, you're right, when you write that email, when you pick up the phone, you need to think of it from their perspective, value their time. I think that's really important. Even with emails, value their time. And, although I do find it a bit annoying, maybe that's just because of the space that I'm in right now, when people say, look, I know you're really busy. You're like, how? How do you know you're really busy? Hey, 1 second picking up the phone or looking at my LinkedIn profile will make you recognise that I do way too much stuff. And they can go, I know you're really busy with all of your volunteering stuff. I think it's really great what you do. Bang, they've just piqued my interest. You've bothered to look me up. You've taken an interest in who I am. Now I'm listening. I don't even know what you're selling.
Correct.
So I guess it's that balance, isn't it?
And that's where that research comes in to say, how well do I know the person that I'm calling? So it's a combination then, because now you've researched in some cases, the business and the individual to be able to have that connection point to start that conversation. But yeah, you've just hit the nail on the head. If somebody were to have that connect point with you that says, I've seen that you're headlong into organising the fair, so I'm guessing you're probably tied up with that at the moment. But do you have a moment to talk? You'll probably go, yes. You are? You kind of know me, and would you like to come and help me do something with the fair at the same time?
Do you want to turn a sausage? I'll give you a meeting. You just got to work a barbecue for half an hour.
But yeah, there's an instant connection there. There's somebody that's done a bit of research, and that is the difference between the call that you get that you take and the call that you get that you hang up, or that you just say, dismiss. No, I'm not interested in you, and you hang up. So, and that's the freshness of it, and that's the that's the subject line. That person's subject line on the call was the one that said, yes, I'm interested to talk to you.
At the first 5 seconds of the phone call.
First 5 seconds, yeah.
It's your first 5 seconds of your email is a subject line, and the first 5 seconds of the phone call is what you say.
Absolutely.
And that leads in quite well to what we were saying earlier about the importance of keeping up to date your CRM, which if you've got a good one, there's some great online options. It's very quick to add in a little note because it'll usually date and time stamp it so you know when you spoke to the person, because nobody can hold all that information about all the relationships we have in their head. So use it. Don't forget to use it. And don't forget to put in things into your calendar, which is what I mentioned before. So, look, lots of great takeaway points today. Thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise again with us, Gary. How can people find out more information about you and your wonderful...
They can find me on LinkedIn, or they can find me on my website, which is yoursalesmanager.net.au. And I just recently put up a 10-question... test your sales excellence quiz, and if you can't answer, I'm titling it, if your competitors can answer yes to 10 of them and you can't, then you're opening the door for your competition to have a better opportunity at winning business. So please visit my website, ask yourself the 10 questions, and I'm happy to do free 20-minute reviews, and then if there's anything that goes beyond that, happy to have a chat beyond that. But it's a thought-provoking 10 questions to say, where do you sit in the curve of where you are in your sales excellence.
What a fantastic yet slightly frightening prospect. There's everyone's homework for today on Small Biz Matters. Look, thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Thank you, Alexi. Appreciate it.
Everyone, you can follow us on Facebook, Small Biz Matters Australia, where you'll find lots of great information, and we'll let you know when the podcasts become available on the website. Plus, you can find out which guests are coming up on the program each and every week. And of course, next week, I'll be sharing with you some more information about admin, that which I love, being efficient, being productive, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about the importance of good bookkeeping practices. Those of you who have just possibly hitting up against the deadline for your BAS, that might be a good one for you to listen to next week. So please join us again next week. We're on every Tuesday at 9 a.m. here on Small Biz Matters. And if you've got any questions, make sure you join us on the Facebook chat page as well. Thanks for joining us, everyone. My name is Alexi Boyd. I will see you all next week. This is Triple H 100.1 FM.